Mongolia looks simple on a map. One country, a lot of space, very few cities. It feels empty, almost unfinished. But being here changes that idea quickly, because Mongolia doesn't feel empty. It feels intentionally open, like the land removed everything unnecessary and kept only what still works, where distance loses meaning. Traveling across Mongolia breaks your sense of scale. There are roads, but they don't always matter. Paths split and disappear. Directions feel optional. Here's the first shock. You can drive for hours without passing a single building. No signs, no fences, no boundaries. Movement here isn't guided. It's negotiated with the land. The horizon stretches so far that it curves slightly at the edges. Your eyes search for reference points, something to measure progress against, but find nothing. The grass moves in waves. The sky presses down with weight you can feel. Time becomes unreliable because nothing changes enough to mark it. GPS coordinates exist here, but they feel theoretical. Locals navigate by reading the terrain itself, the way a valley curves, how a hillside catches afternoon light, where certain rock formations break the flatness. These are directions that can't be written down or programmed. They require presence. What unsettles visitors most isn't the distance itself. It's the realization that distance here doesn't measure the same way it does elsewhere. 10 kilometers can take an hour. 50 kilometers might pass in minutes. The land decides when the desert isn't what you expect. The Gobi Desert doesn't behave like most deserts. There's sand, but also grass. Heat, but also cold. Wide plains, then sudden cliffs. Here's what surprises most visitors. This desert supports life. Animals move constantly. Weather shifts fast. Nothing feels still for long. The Gobi isn't dead land. It's active, just quiet. Herds of gazelles appear without warning, moving in synchronized patterns across terrain that looks incapable of supporting them. Camels stand motionless against distant ridges, their shapes wavering in heat that rises from ground still cold from the previous night. Temperature swings here are extreme. Mornings can freeze water left in containers overnight. By midday, the same ground radiates heat that makes breathing feel difficult. Then evening arrives fast, dropping temperatures again before sunset fully completes. The desert's color palette refuses simplicity. There's rust-red rock, pale sand, dark scrub vegetation, patches of unexpected green where underground water reaches close enough to the surface. The land layered these colors without pattern, creating compositions that look deliberate but formed randomly over millennia. And then the sand rises, where the desert builds walls. In southern Mongolia, dunes appear suddenly. This is Khongoryn Els. Here's the shock. These dunes stretch for over 100 kilometers and reach heights that block sound. When the wind moves just right, the sand produces a low vibration. The desert doesn't just sit here. It reacts. Standing at the base of these dunes creates a specific kind of disorientation. The scale doesn't register immediately. What looks like a hill from a distance reveals itself as a mountain of sand when approached. Climbing takes effort that surprises. Each step sinks, making progress slower than anticipated. The sound phenomenon happens unpredictably. Some visitors wait hours and hear nothing. Others arrive to find the dunes already humming. A deep, resonant tone that seems to come from beneath the surface rather than from the wind passing over it. The vibration travels through your feet before reaching your ears. Local guides describe the dunes as living. Not metaphorically, they mean the dunes move, reshape, grow, and shrink with seasonal patterns that repeat but never identically. Paths that existed last month might be buried this month. The landscape refuses to be memorized. If you're interested in places where silence, distance, and scale change how you think, subscribe. This channel explores destinations that don't behave the way we expect land to behave. When mountains appear without warning. Driving west, the land stays flat. Until suddenly it doesn't. The Altai Mountains rise sharply from open plains. Here's what feels wrong. There's no gradual approach. The mountains don't announce themselves. They interrupt the landscape. Snow remains year-round. Movement slows immediately. The land switches rules without warning. The transition happens fast enough to feel unnatural. One moment the road follows endless steppe. The next moment, peaks fill the windshield. Their presence so immediate it seems impossible they weren't visible minutes earlier. These mountains hold glaciers that feed rivers visible from significant distances, thin blue lines cutting through brown and green terrain. The water carries sediment that gives it an opaque turquoise color. Unlike the clear streams found elsewhere in Mongolia, wildlife changes completely here. Golden eagles circle high thermals. Ibex navigate cliff faces with precision that looks impossible. Snow leopards exist in these ranges, though seeing one requires luck that borders on statistical impossibility. The air thins noticeably. Breathing requires adjustment. Physical effort becomes taxing in ways that feel disproportionate to the actual elevation. The mountains don't accommodate visitors. They tolerate them. Where water feels too clean. In the north, the environment softens. Pine forests appear. The air cools. Movement slows again. This is Lake Khovsgol. Here's what surprises people. This lake holds nearly 70% of Mongolia's fresh water. The water is clear, cold, untouched. Standing here doesn't feel relaxing. It feels preserved, deliberately. The lake's depth creates unusual optical effects. Looking into the water reveals layers, different shades of blue descending into darkness that suggests bottomlessness. Rocks on the lake bed remain visible at depths that should obscure them. Temperature here stays consistently cold. Even in summer, the water never becomes comfortable for swimming. It shocks the system on contact, forcing quick decisions about whether to continue or retreat. The surrounding forest grows right to the water's edge in most places, creating boundaries that feel natural rather than designed. Trees reflect perfectly on calm days, doubling the landscape in ways that confuse depth perception. When history is left open, Central Mongolia stretches wide and quiet. This is the Orkhon Valley. Here's the strange part. This area shaped empires, but nothing is enclosed. No gates, no barriers, no forced routes. The land remembers history without marking it loudly. Archaeological sites exist here in states of partial excavation and partial abandonment. Stone foundations outline structures that once housed thousands. Channels show where water systems redirected rivers for agriculture that fed armies. But there are no visitor centers, no paved paths, no explanatory plaques at regular intervals. History here requires effort to understand. You must bring context with you or hire guides who carry knowledge passed through generations. The land doesn't explain itself. What's preserved isn't the monuments, it's the openness. The same valleys that allowed massive movements of people centuries ago still permit unrestricted travel today. The strategic value that made this region important, its accessibility, its water sources, its sight lines, all remain functional. Why Mongolia feels unsettling? Mongolia removes structure. No dense borders, no constant landmarks, no compression. That's what makes it uncomfortable for some people. The land doesn't guide you. It doesn't distract you. It doesn't fill silence. It gives you space and waits to see how you handle it. Most modern environments organize experience. Cities provide constant stimulation. Suburbs offer predictable patterns. Even wilderness areas in many countries include trail systems, campgrounds, designated viewpoints, infrastructure that mediates the encounter with nature. Mongolia largely refuses this mediation. The experience here is direct, unfiltered, sometimes overwhelming. Visitors often report a specific kind of anxiety that develops after days in open steppe. Not danger exactly, more like exposure. The constant visibility in all directions, the absence of shelter, the awareness that help exists far away, accessible only through effort and time. Some people find this liberating. Others find it intolerable. The land doesn't adjust to either reaction.